Debating no contact after wedding planning stunt. Hi, I've posted a couple things now about my mum, Phoebe, and my fiance's mother, Felicity, and someone suggested I post here if I wanted advice on the whole subject. Basically, I proposed to fiance about 4 months ago now, right before we started new jobs. Our new jobs are entry-level dog's body type things, and we're meant to be working 40 hours a week, but almost every week have wound up doing 60 hours, so we've not had time to do any wedding stuff. This should have been fine because we agreed on a long engagement, a couple of years, because after a couple years of working at our new jobs our schedules will be more regular, we'll have more savings, and we'll have more vacation time. And we told our families this. We didn't plan on even telling them we were engaged for a while, but they came over the morning after I proposed, and we forgot fiancé was still wearing the ring. Our ideal wedding would be very very small, literally a dozen people in the registrar's office, no huge ceremony or church wedding or anything like that, and after that a reception for anyone who wasn't invited to the ceremony. We told them that we didn't want to empty our savings account on some over-the-top wedding when we felt that all that mattered was we end the day legally married. We found out a couple of days ago that Felicity, Phoebe, and our sisters, I have 2 full sisters, one younger one older, fiancé has a half-sister, and a sister-in-law, had gone ahead and planned our entire wedding in about 4 months. They had a binder, a hand-decorated binder where they wrote "Op" and fiancé's wedding planner, 2020 because they planned on us getting married next spring. They also sent out save the dates on our behalf to about 150 people, 100 of which we didn't even know. And when I say they planned the whole thing, I mean they planned the whole thing, right down to the napkin rings. They'd booked us appointments with venues, and fittings, and stuff like that, and even put down a deposit on a caterer, giving £1,500 to my vegan cousin to cook vegan food for a non-vegan wedding about 9 months from now. The planner also said stuff like cake tasting with baker, on, date, at, time, cake must be yellow with lemon buttercream, and frosting, tux must be shirt, jacket, tie, and kilt, dress must be ivory ball gown with satin skirt, full sleeves, and yellow heels, appointment with florist, must have yellow lilies. These are exact quotes lifted directly from the binder. The total cost of all of this? 15 grand, and rising. Our families were willing to put up 1/6 of the price each, so they'd put up 5k total, and we were expected to produce the remaining 10k when we only have about 2k in savings, and want our next big purchase to be a house. We went into damage control. We called Felicity, and Phoebe, and they cussed us out over the phone calling me, 28 mil, and fiancé, 27F, ungrateful children. We emailed everyone with save the dates, and said the date was agreed without us, and we'd get back in touch when we were ready, and directed any questions to Felicity, and Phoebe. I then got a message from older sister saying that if I wasn't going through with the wedding they expected to be paid for the time they put into it. I blocked her, and fiancé got a message from sister-in-law saying that we should pay then minimum wage at least, and per person per hour that came to just under 2k. Phoebe and Felicity agreed with them, telling us that we put in work expecting payment in the form of an amazing wedding. If you don't want to pay for our time and effort, you could see through the wedding, and then we'd plan it for free. I uninvited Phoebe and my sisters. Fiancé has uninvited Felicity and her sisters. Fiancé's parents are mid-divorce, so we're both fine with fiancé's father coming to the wedding when it happens in a couple of years, and my father gets how insane this whole thing was and I want him there. But we're not sure what to do about the mums and sisters, especially as the dads are always going to be in contact with their respective wives/daughters. Also, youngest sister and half-sister have got in touch and apologized, saying they were told by Phoebe and Felicity that this was something we'd asked them to do. They both also produced screenshots sent by Phoebe where Phoebe asks us about a wedding detail, and we respond positively, e.g. how do you feel about a yellow color theme? Great. Go for it. But when we saw these screenshots it has mine or fiancé's name as the caller ID, and below that it has the phone number, and the phone numbers used match either Felicity or older sister, so it looks like they faked these texts to keep youngest sister and half-sister in on the planning, and that's why they didn't bring it up with us in person, which is a whole new level of crazy, but I suppose that it's not the worst thing they did just in this incident. Edit 2, fiancé and I talked, and we still want to go with the first plan. It takes 6 weeks to get a marriage certificate where we live. We are debating just doing it ASAP, but we feel that it could be too much like just getting it over with, and we worry we'd be doing it for the wrong reasons. If you to our mothers, and not because this is the right time. We want to stick to our original plan. We're 4 months into employment right now, and once we hit the 12-month mark we get a week of vacation time, and less overtime. Once we're at 18 to 24 months it's 3 weeks of vacation time, no coming in outside 9 to 5 unless it's crucial, and we go up a pay grade. If we can wait even 8 more months we'll have more in savings, and be able to have our cheap as chips wedding, followed by a meal with our guests, both dads, half, and youngest sister, and some friends, and then take a short honeymoon, and have some one-on-one time before coming back, and throwing a reception party for everyone not invited to the wedding. Well, I assumed since the bride wasn't wearing it, white was fair game. I know, mother-in-law wearing white to the wedding is a tale as old as time, but I figure that, like snowflakes, every just no mother-in-law is different, and also the last couple days have brought up some stuff for me and I kind of just need to vent about this, and then I'm done. So it's tradition in my family to wear a blue wedding dress. Not a bright or vivid blue, but a dress that's primarily white with a blue trim or pattern or belt or something. When dear husband and I got married, I was prepared to shuck this tradition, as the white with blue dresses I'd seen so far didn't really stand out to me, but then I went to the bridal store, and found this gorgeous blue dress. The top was white lace, with 3/4 sleeves, there was a silver belt around the waist, and it had a floor-length skirt in a very pale blue color. I've used the phrase love at first sight twice in my life, once with dear husband, and once with this dress. So of course just no mother-in-law says, with a mouth like a cat's arse, you can't wear that, it's a bridesmaid dress. There was an identical dress that was totally white on the same rail, and they were both under giant lettering that said bridal. I said I wanted to at least try it on, and I let the others help me pick out a couple of other options, and I did try the other options on. But I knew the blue one was my dress, and they knew it, too. The only one who didn't like it was toxic mother-in-law, who was insisting on a white dress. She kept trying to push me towards the white version of my dress, but I wasn't having it. I had my heart set on the blue dress, and no one was changing my mind. Mother-in-law seemed to accept it, and move on, and it took me less than 10 minutes to pick out my dress, so we used the rest of the appointment to look at bridesmaid dresses, and both mothers also picked out dresses for themselves. Bridesmaids wound up with navy blue floor-length dresses, and the mothers came away with a dark turquoise dress for my mom, and a gold dress for his. With all the dresses sorted, we left happy, and while toxic mother-in-law still wasn't happy about my blue dress, she seemed to have brushed it off. Cut to the day before the wedding. Last minute, 11th hour, everything going wrong. Dear husband is at the venue getting the last minute setup done while I'm at home fielding calls. The venue wants to know how we intend to fit everyone in. The caterer is saying there's not enough food. The florist is having issues with centerpieces. The baker said that someone from the wedding party called to modify the cake. The modifications included size, they wanted it bigger, flavor, switch to coffee, and the color of the frosting, gold. I don't connect the dots. Toxic mother-in-law comes up to me asking me if I needed her to get a new cake. No, the cake is staying as it is. Then she wants to know if I want the flowers changed to something prettier. No, we like the flowers. She then asked me when dear husband would be getting to her place, as she expected him to stay with her that night. No, he will be with me. Then I went to the seating chart only to see not one, but 2 whole new tables, 2 by 12 seaters that we had not paid for, had been added. It was comprised entirely of people we didn't know. Toxic mother-in-law told me those were her friends she'd invited to the wedding, and she didn't tell us sooner because I knew you'd say no. You're being such a bridezilla. She'd given this alternative seating chart to the venues, the caterers, the florist, all of whom had no clue how I could leave off 2 by 12 seater tables from my plan. She'd also been the one to call the baker, and get the cake changed so her friends would like it. That was it for me. I yelled at her to back the F off our wedding, and yelled for sister-in-law, who was across the hall from me, to get her away from me before I spend my wedding day in jail. Sister-in-law showed up, and saved both of us, me from doing something I might regret eventually, and toxic mother-in-law from homicide, dragging toxic mother-in-law away, and told her to go get a coffee or something. Toxic mother-in-law stomped off towards the high street, and sister-in-law rang everyone on mother-in-law's tables, and rescinded their invitation, and called everyone she'd called to get her actions reversed. Next day, wedding day, everything is going perfectly, except mother-in-law has disappeared, which could be seen as a good thing, except this is right after I yelled at her, so it has to be bad. She finally shows up, barely in time for the ceremony to start. She was wearing a white, lacy, ankle-length dress with a gold belt, and a white cardigan with a 3/4 sleeve over it. Reminder, the bottom half of my dress was blue, but the top half was white lace with a 3/4 sleeve, and it had a silver belt. She continues to wear this dress throughout the reception, and for the rest of the day. Anytime someone says something to her about the dress, she just gives a little twirl, or a proud smile, with some line about yes, Isn't it lovely? One of my bridesmaids asked what she thought she was doing, and she apparently replied, with a huge smile, "Well, I assumed since the bride wasn't wearing it, white was fair game." We ignored her all night. We went on our honeymoon the next day, and thus began a 2-and-a-bit-year period of total silence on our end. This was the first time she'd indicated that she was full-on crazy, with the second being the stew incident, and before the dress incident there were absolutely no indicators, aside from the obvious xenophobia. But really, whose mother-in-law isn't a little xenophobic? The stew incident actually marked the end of her second chance with us, as the family dinners were our way of letting her back into our lives, and we only had a bit under a year of them before having to bow out of those. 2. Just to add, we'd intentionally gone small with the wedding, and our guest list totaled less than 50 people. Mother-in-law invited the equivalent of half our guest list. Wouldn't give toxic mother-in-law my late nan's recipe, and inadvertently caused a schism. Advice: TLDR, toxic mother-in-law tells me how disgusting my nanny's recipe is to my face. Dear husband says he loves it. Toxic mother-in-law turns around, and asks for it so she can change it to how she wants. And when I say no as it's a family recipe, she tells dear husband's family I disowned her. I'm about to tear my hair out over this witch. I have this recipe for Irish stew. My family is Irish, and this is my nanny's recipe, written by her, by hand, in Irish, years before she passed. I can read the recipe, as can most of my family, but dear husband, and his family can. Dear husband has picked up some Irish from me, but mainly swear words. Nanny taught me how to make the stew along with some soda bread to go with it, and it's honed over generations of my family. Nanny always told me she was taught by great-gran, who was taught by her mum, who was taught by her mum, who was taught by her mum. There's been the odd change as it went, but only 1 or 2 ingredients per generation of women. Nanny taught me how to make this stew, with the measurements she was taught, a dash of this, a pinch of that, just enough of this, and the actual measurements have been lost to time or left back in Ireland or something like that, because that's the only measurements I have. Nanny made sure I knew it by heart, and made me promise to only ever give it to direct relatives, siblings, future spouse, I was about 8 at the time, cousins. I consider this recipe to be a family heirloom as it's meant to be passed through generations, and me, and each of my siblings/cousins were actually left these recipe pages in Nanny's will, so it's literally my inheritance. My toxic mother-in-law has openly scoffed at the idea of a recipe not having exact measurements, and my inheritance being the recipe sheet. Don't be silly. Inheritance is money or things, not a scrap of paper, and insulted my Irish heritage more than once to my face. One thing that sticks out is when I dropped a knife while cooking. It almost went through my foot, and I let out an Irish swear word, and she yelled at me to speak English. My dear husband's family. Dear husband, 3 siblings, toxic mother-in-law, lovable father-in-law, and siblings partners, do family meals once a month, where they all take turns hosting, whether that means all going out or someone cooking. And dear husband, who loves the stew, asked me to make it. I agreed, as the recipe I have usually makes enough for 10 people. Dear husband just goes to these dinners for his siblings, and lovable father-in-law. He can take or leave toxic mother-in-law most days, but this is the easiest way for him to see his siblings, who he loves. He, his siblings, and lovable father-in-law love the stew. Toxic mother-in-law had a comment about everything, calling the lamb stringy, the potato unnecessary. This is an Irish recipe, and the bread handmade, which it was, but apparently the store-bought is so much nicer, and she kept saying what changes she would make. More herbs, needs beef instead. The bread is too crusty, it's bread. Dear husband could see me looking like I was about to launch myself over the table, and rugby tackle toxic mother-in-law, and interrupted her saying that he loved it. It was his favorite, and his siblings, and lovable father-in-law chimed in saying they all liked it too. My toxic mother-in-law looked like they'd all taken turns slapping, and then disowning her. The rest of the night passes without any incident. Then the next night I get a text from toxic mother-in-law. Hello Ms. TTS reads, I was wondering if I could get a copy of your stew recipe, as I wanted to see if I could tweak it so everyone liked it. Just a few modifications, so it's a bit more palatable. I tried Googling Irish stew, and found a recipe online, but it tasted like crap. We talked some more, and she said she wanted a translated handwritten version of both the stew and bread recipe, and she wanted me to show her how it worked, step by step, in person. The recipe doesn't translate over properly, and it takes 6 hours to cook just the stew, and that's when I don't let the stock sit overnight. The last time I cooked with her she was backseat cooking the whole time, added stuff when I wasn't looking, and when I was, she complained about it. Do you have to put in that much? Are you sure about this? I'd never do that. At the suggestion of people over on Ida, I tried to be firm, but fair. I told her that I could send her a scan of the original handwritten recipe, but it would be in Irish. No, I cannot show you how to make it, as it takes 6 hours and I don't have that kind of time. Besides, when you tried it all you did is say why you didn't like it. No, I will not go through the recipe again to figure out exact measurements, type it all up, and print it off for you. Because sorry, family secret, Nanny made me promise to only ever give it to my future children. But here's some other recipes online that are pretty similar. You can try one of these as you're planning on changing it anyway. Toxic mother-in-law hits the roof. I didn't find out until this morning, when dear husband and I were having breakfast, and his phone starts going off. He looks at me, and goes, "Babe, why is mom saying you disowned her?" I look at his texts. She didn't bother to reply to my text saying it was a family secret, and toxic mother-in-law is literally saying that I have banned her, and dear husband from keeping in contact, made her unwelcome in our home, and I've told her that we aren't family. Then his siblings, and their partners start messaging me. Their reactions range from "how dare you talk to our dear mother like this" to "I'm sure this isn't what happened, but you might need to run damage control." I have no clue what to do here. I really feel strongly about not giving her the recipe, as this recipe is involved in nearly every fond memory I have of Nanny, and she did make me promise to only give it to immediate relatives or my future spouse, which is a rule I've never broken. Plus, if Nanny was alive to know I gave her recipe to someone who openly disliked, and wanted to change it, she wouldn't care how old I am. My arse would be bright red from her wooden spoon in no time. But toxic mother-in-law has effectively divided the family into people who think I hate her, brother-in-law, his wife, who I get on well with, and the oldest grandkid, and people who don't think I hate her, but think I still need to do something to fix this, sister-in-law, other brother-in-law, lovable father-in-law, and dear husband is firmly on my side. Any ideas how to fix this that don't involve giving Nanny's recipe to someone who openly disrespected it? Also, I didn't fix it. I sent the screenshots of the messages between me and mother-in-law to the group chat that featured all of dear husband's family, the people she complained to, and dear husband followed up with a message saying that we were opting out of the family meals for a while at least. The brother-in-law who sided with toxic mother-in-law originally is calling us both drama queens. The sister-in-law and brother-in-law who sided with us to begin with have messaged us privately saying they understand, they'll calm toxic mother-in-law on their end, and they've asked if they can come over for dinner in future without telling toxic mother-in-law. Update 2. The recipe, minus the secret ingredient. Link 1 in description. Sláinte. Update 3, where we're at. So, these family meals were meant to be her second chance, after the dress incident. For anyone who hasn't seen that, I wore a wedding dress that was white on top, and pale blue on the bottom to my wedding, and she wore an entirely white dress because the bride isn't wearing white. We hadn't spoken to her for more than 2 years after that happened, and then lovable father-in-law had a health scare. He's fine now, and dear husband got back in touch with his family, who invited him to join their monthly family meal, which I encouraged him to do as he really missed his siblings and dad. Then the stew incident happened. Toxic mother-in-law is now on a timeout, potentially forever. With her is JN brother-in-law, who is a little crap, to be honest, and dear husband told me he was glad to be shot of the little bastard. JN brother-in-law is currently enjoying his spot as mummy's favorite, as toxic mother-in-law told lovable brother-in-law and lovable sister-in-law that she viewed me not giving her Nanny's recipe as an insult, and they told her to get over it because it's special to me, and all she did was insult it. To which toxic mother-in-law replied that she didn't want to speak to them until she's ready. They agree that she's batcrap crazy, and this is ridiculous. Me, and dear husband, along with lovable brother-in-law and lovable sister-in-law, plus their kiddos and spouses, are going to arrange a rota of our own, where the lot of us have a monthly family meal. The kids are between 8 and 16, and actually very well behaved, and aren't just no's at all. But toxic mother-in-law doesn't like kids, shocking as she's had 4 of them, so even though the kids wanted to see the family, toxic mother-in-law wasn't letting them come. The rota starts in a couple weeks, when dear husband and I have offered to kick things off with another home-cooked meal. Lovable sister-in-law and her husband will be choosing a restaurant. They're not huge on cooking. The month after that, then lovable brother-in-law and his husband will cook the month after that, then it's back to us. We want to invite lovable father-in-law, but we're worried the witch would tag along, so that might be something to revisit, as he's already asked if there's any way I could smuggle him some soda bread and another bowl of stew. Toxic mother-in-law is going out of town for a couple days, including the day dear husband and I will be cooking for the Just Yeses, so we might see what we can do with that. Final update. I told my mom what I'd done, and she told me this story about Nanny that I'd never heard before. So Nanny was really petty, and my granddad's mom, her mother-in-law, was evil. Around 40 years ago, Nanny's toxic mother-in-law tried to steal her brownie recipe, and Nanny didn't want her to have it, so she made copies of the recipe, and brought her brownies to church, and gave copies of the recipe to anyone who asked, except for her toxic mother-in-law. So, as Mum told me over a cup of tea, me sharing this with literally everyone. But my toxic mother-in-law is exactly the kind of thing Nanny Maureen would approve of me doing with her recipe. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.